has spent the last 16 years guiding the digital strategies of companies such as MTV, News Corp, Citibank, TCS, HDFC Bank, Cleartrip and Reliance on both Indian and global markets. Vivek is the co-chair of Sempo APAC. He is also on the advisory board of DMAI, AdTech, DMTI. Exchange for Media recently recognized Vivek as one of the top 50 digital icons of India. Vivek has traveled to more than 40 countries on various consulting and project assignments and has lived in Dubai for 2 years. Vivek is passionately committed to Communicate's mission of being the biggest contextual advertising firm in the emerging market, offshore contextual advertising. Communicate 2 was recently acquired by iProspect, an Aegis media company last year, following which Vivek Bhargava continues as the managing director of this merged entity to be called iProspect 82. So ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for the man who's on the road of being the biggest contextual advertising firm in the world, Mr. Vivek Bhargava. Way to go!
So Vivek, welcome to Jam with Sam, and it's nice having you here. Finally I got you. I think I've been chasing you.
You've been very quite persistent. It's like
almost I think 3 months.
Yeah. So actually, one of the guys had told me one thing which I've never forgotten. I said that as an entrepreneur, I think money grows on the tree of persistence. So many times, like if you're persistent about a certain thing, then you will get
Persistence.
Yeah. So I just thought of the phrase. Money grows on the tree of persistence, and I think as an entrepreneur, I think that's the most important quality, probably out of passion, that one needs, because you go through a lot of pain, and the only thing that gets you through is persistence.
Persistence, I know. So Vivek, tell me something about where were you born, what was the college, and how you got into being an entrepreneur.
Okay,
so let's start.
That's a long story. So basically, I was born in Bombay, but what happened was my father started a business venture that failed miserably. He took a break and he suddenly decided to go to Mussoorie. So I did my entire schooling in Mussoorie.
Wow.
Came back from Mussoorie and joined Bombay Scottish out here. And actually, I think that was a very important phase of my life, because what happened was in Bombay Scottish, everything they had done in Mussoorie, like, if we learned history coming of Europeans, they had done Indus Valley civilization. I came here in Bombay Scottish, which was my school. They finished off the entire ICC portion in the 9th itself, right? So I joined in the 9th, 8th they had finished off half of it already. Then I got jaundice, I got relapse. Then I was trying to show off my horse riding skills on Juhu Beach, where the horse fell on me. So I was in a fracture. So the whole of 9th I didn't go to school. And then basically 10th was only revisions. And I realized there's no way I can basically score good marks in any subject that require understanding. So mugging got me through, and I scored 90 in history, geography, civics, 90 in sciences, and I got 64 in maths. But I just got 83.2, which just got me into both NM and Sydenham, the 2 colleges that I wanted to get into. Okay. But I think that is the time when it dawned on me. So in Mussoorie, I used to be a state ranking table tennis player. I used to be one of the wealthiest guys in Mussoorie because I had sold off, my father had sold off his Nepean Sea Road flat and bought a mansion in Mussoorie. So, in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed guy is the king. Right? So basically what happened was, it was such a rude awakening in Bombay Scottish. I used to think that people treat me nice because of what I am. In Bombay Scottish, it dawned on me that you get treated nice because of who you are. And I think that was the time when I decided that, okay, I will attempt to give it the best shot I have and be successful in whatever I do. Otherwise, I'm going to get treated like the way I was getting treated in Scottish.
Okay.
So I think a lot of persistence, of perseverance, of entrepreneurship came to me during those 2 years where I just mugged to get my way through in school.
Okay.
But then I think our family business is musical instruments. So I got into Bhargava's music is ours.
Okay.
So we have this very interesting carrot rule in our family. I call it the carrot rule. All the kids who are 14, 15 years of age are told, if you come and attend office, we send you abroad every 3 months. It's only when we grew up we realized that a lot of trade fairs, right? Hiring a host is very expensive.
Okay.
The kid is the cheapest resource you can find. At the cost of an air ticket, you take him, he works with you 12, 14 hours a day. He'll clean up the stall, he'll get you coffee, even at 12 o'clock in the night you tell him, beta ye kar do, so he'll do it. So the thing is, that cost of an air ticket is and the thing is, best is then the kid also works 3 months in Bombay.
Okay.
Right? Because you taking him to Europe, so 3 months he'll work here to go to Europe, then you work there. But anyway, it worked out well because 14 you come back and so you tell your prospective girlfriends. I was in Paris yesterday, right? There I was doing jhadu in the trade fairs, but still, and at 14 you only have prospective girlfriends. So you won't tell them the jhadu part because then they'll remain prospective. But and that is the time when I think I got exposed to digital.
Okay.
And this was 1997, 1998.
Oh, okay.
And it fascinated me. I loved the way, especially America, was using digital marketing for marketing communication. And I had this brilliant idea. I was all of 24 and I said, you know what, I'll help Indian companies leverage technology for marketing communication. I'll carve a niche for myself and help them create wealth. And I was very naive. 1997, digital marketing. So you can imagine what I must have gone through. But that was my start. I think the trips to US and other parts of the world helped me to get this thing that, okay, I'm going to digital marketing is what I want to do. And I think I was quite lucky to sort of stay in it while it arrived. Okay. So it took almost 14 years for digital marketing to arrive in India. So I joke around with people that it was almost like 14 years of Vanvas got over and now finally Diwali has come. It was like, because my earlier pitches used to be like, sir, you need a website. And I've had companies who are 2,000, 3,000 crores in size and they say, yes, Vivek, we are convinced we need a website. And just before I would say yippee, they'd say, you know what, we're not sure. Should we get it now or should we wait for 5-7 years? And like I was almost 24. If you're at 24, right, you believe life ends at 30. Right? And I say, okay, if they're not going to make a website for 6 more years, by the time I'm going to be 30, when will I do digital marketing? Because if they don't make a website, there's no way I can do digital marketing. But luckily, that after 14 years, digital did arrive, and it was a der aaya, durust aaya.
Okay. So that's how you started over. So how old is your company now?
So 17 years old.
Okay. And you recently got bought over about 2 years back.
Yeah, 1.5 years.
So how did that happen? I mean, a lot of people want their company to be bought over. Like, I'll make millions of rupees doing that over there.
So honestly speaking, if you ask me my honest view, right? So at any point in time, if my objective was to make money, I would have left this business long time back. Okay. So I'll give you an example, right? I come from a business family, right? So if you take most of the creative pursuits, success is subjective. But entrepreneurship, I believe, is a creative pursuit, where the subject is very objective, right? This is a yardstick. You make profit, you're a good entrepreneur. You don't make profit, you're not a good entrepreneur. Right? WhatsApp and all is changing all that, but still, let's come to that later. But the fact of the matter is, so, after 10 years of struggle, my dad sat me down one day. He said, Vivek, you leave for work at 7 a.m. in the morning. Sometimes you come home at 10 o'clock, sometimes at 12 o'clock, sometimes you don't come home the whole night. You're working so hard. So let me ask you one thing. I think you work more than everybody else in the family. So I nodded my head. He said, how come you make the least amount of money? That was his question to me, right? And he was very serious about it, right? I thought to myself, I said, Papa, kya kare? Bhagwan ne dimag kam diya hai, mehnat zyada karni padti hai. But the fact of the matter is, if the objective was to create wealth, right, I would have left this business long time back. Because just imagine, you started this business in 1997 and 2011, which is 14 years. Nothing was happening, right? You would still get that 1%, 1.5% of digital spends out of the total advertising budget. 1.5% would come to us, right? So it was not happening. I think it was a labor of love. This is what I love doing. Every morning when I went to work, this is what I looked forward for going to work. And I think then what happens is that a lot of things that happen, like whether it's your company gets sold or you create wealth, all those things, it is where you don't, your journey is what you enjoy, right? And the destination may happen where your company could get bought over, you may end up creating wealth, but that cannot be the objective, because I would have left this business a long time back. So I know a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my friends who were in similar businesses, right? They left the business because the objective was to make money. They were not passionate about what they did. The objective was to make money, and when they saw that it was not happening, they left it. And in hindsight, they're regretting it today. But the thing is, that's what. So build a successful company, build something that you truly love, do things that you love doing. In that journey, acquisitions may happen, you may end up creating wealth, all those things may happen. But the journey is what you should enjoy. The joy is in the journey rather than the destination.
So now what is the kind of role you have over there? So you made a lot of money after selling off your company?
Sort of.
So
I'll tell you what my definition of success is, right? It's a very different definition, right? So for me, my father passed away about 9 months back, right? So I was sitting in the hospital, Asian Heart Hospital, 8 p.m. or something, they shut off the lights. Now, you're not used to sleeping at 8 p.m., right? So then what happens is I say, okay, this is a good time to write down my goals. So I summarized my entire goal into one sentence. That one sentence was that I want to lead a joyful life. Every hour, every minute, every second, right? So I said, okay, if that is my goal, right, what is my definition of success? My definition of success is very simple. If I get to do only the things that give me joy, and I have the freedom to say no to everything that doesn't give me joy, right, I'm successful. And that doesn't require too much money, right? So the thing is, at any point of time, if you can prevent yourself from doing anything that you don't like doing, that doesn't give you joy, right, I think you're successful. And then it doesn't require, so it requires certain amount of money, so the basic Maslow laws have to be taken care of, right, and whatever luxuries that you're used to, right, because downgrading is difficult. But other than that, it doesn't require too much, right? So that is what my definition was. And then if that is the perspective, right, then you look at life very differently, right? Then what happens is you want to create a world-class organization. You want to be the best there is. You want to, so I'm attempting to write a book, but I think that's a taboo topic now, I've realized. So I've written 35 chapters, and I think I'm wondering whether I should now write any more or not after our session today.
She said you should.
Yeah, so I think then what happens is the passion takes over. This is what you love doing.
Absolutely.
And then, but I do have to agree, with money, life is more fun.
Yes, I know.
So I will not deny that. But after a while, it's this, there is a very interesting dialogue in Entrapped movie, right, where Catherine Jones, or Sean Connery tells Catherine Zeta-Jones that what can you buy with 7 billion that you can't buy with 4 billion, right? Numbers are very different, but after a certain point of time in a place like India, right, there is nothing much you can buy with something which you can't buy with something else, right? So what happens is, then you have to find a different focus in life rather than the wealth part of it. Because at least the basic necessities are taken care of, and then that's about it. Yeah.
So you are a very active sports person. I can see the band on your hand over there. So what's the kind of thing which drives you over there?
So the thing is, I met somebody, I won't name the person. We were having a conversation, and I was telling her about my passion of table tennis. So she said something which is very rude. She said, like, you don't look like a person who plays any sport. So I said, like, what, that's also in Bombay Scottish, I was like, table tennis is not considered a sport, but I play table tennis 5 times a week, 1.5 hours every day. Oh. And so I used to be a state level player in table tennis in under 14 category in UP State, and left it for 15 years. A couple of years back, one of my friends from US got stuck out here because of some visa issues. Started playing table tennis again, and I'm enjoying every moment of it. Okay. So whenever I'm in Bombay, about 4 to 5 times a week, I'm there in the morning, 7:30 to 9 I play. And it's an amazing sport, because I think what I like about table tennis as a sport is that all the other sports or any exercise that you do, right, your mind is still working. You go running, you go to the gym. Even if you play tennis, right, there is a lot of downtime between the rallies and when the ball boy is fetching the balls, etc. Table tennis, what happens is it's an extremely fast sport. So when you are there on the table, right, you forget about all the problems you're having at work, all the problems you may be having at home. That 1 hour is like meditation. Everything is forgotten. That 1 hour you are in the sport. So whenever I try to do something with running, etc., right, after a while you have to like drag yourself out of bed. Here what happened was, like, tomorrow there's a voting thing. So I found out that, okay, the polling booth, what time is it opening? Can I go to the polling booth before it opens, get it completed, then go for my table tennis, and then go to the office? So I was actually sitting out there and saying polling booth timings, and somebody told me this 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I said, okay, 8 a.m. I can reach there. So that's how passionate I am about playing table tennis nowadays.
And what about paragliding?
So paragliding is something which, it's been right from my childhood, right? So I still remember my first memory was, there used to be Navino battery ads, where this kid used to sit on the battery and the battery would fly. right? I was almost confident that that's the best way to fly, right? So I would have, you know, if we probably didn't have those, what do I say, those sariye wariye hote na ghar mein, whatever that, otherwise I would have jumped with a battery outside my house. But
Thank God you did.
yeah, thank God I didn't. So paragliding is something which allows me to fly, is the closest form of free flight. I almost feel one with God when you're flying, because what happens is there is no motor. You're flying, and there are a lot of really good places to fly in India. So training I would not recommend, but now I think there are enough good schools also. But when I learned paragliding about 15-18 years ago, India was not the best place to learn paragliding, so I learned in Salt Lake City in Utah.
Okay.
But after that I bought my own glider. Then whenever I got a chance, I've flown in Goa, Panchgani, Virar, a lot of places, Kamshet, etc. quite often.
Okay.
In fact, I was in Kamshet about a couple of months back.
Yeah.
So it's good fun. But it's a phenomenal sport. I love it. It's when you're flying, right? It's a phenomenal feeling. It's anybody who's not done paragliding, at least go for tandem. If you're not scared of heights, go for tandem. Where it's a very safe sport. There's no motor, so per se, chances of, and fly in a place which does tandem, right? So it's a very safe thing, because at the end of it, nothing can mechanically fail in that thing. So worst comes to worst, what will happen is you'll get a draft where, so I've had times where from 6 feet or 5 feet up the ground, you fall a little harder than what, but 5 feet is what here, yeah. So maximum is going to happen is you'll probably injure your ankle. But I've flown hundreds of flights and never had any injury. I know hundreds of pilots with the similar thing. So it's a great experience.
And you are also known as a Google Glass. You are not wearing your Google Glass today. So tell us something about the Google Glass. I mean, is it worth plonking down $1,500?
If you sold your company, probably yes. But otherwise, no. So honestly speaking, right, it's actually right now in the beta stage, but it gives you a concept what wearable things are going to be. But I'll give you an example. Like, I recorded a video of playing table tennis.
Okay.
Right, and it's one of the most phenomenal videos of table tennis I've ever seen.
Okay.
Because what happens is that the ball is coming towards you. When you're hitting the ball with your racket, you can see the angle that you're getting this angle of your eye. So the ball is hitting your racket here, and you're hitting the ball, and you can get that video. And the only way to shoot that video is if you're wearing something on your head, right? And this is even better than the GoPro kind of stuff.
Right,
this
correct.
is on the eyes, right?
Correct.
So what happens is, and luckily what happened was one of my friends, you know, Julio was down from US, so he also had Google Glass. I had Google Glass. So we played the entire game at both of the sides. We were wearing Google Glass.
Okay.
And now we just have not had the time, but we can
Synchronize
it,
that.
right? So just imagine you getting that feel of a sport. Will the future of sport be possible where you will actually get a camera angle of the player itself, what he sees, right? And I think it's very easily possible, right? And that's what I think the future is. So somebody asked me what is the biggest use of Google Glass. So my answer to that was taking selfies, because I have helped at least 1,000 people take their own selfies with Google Glass.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest benefit Google Glass has happened to most people. But I think it's phenomenal because it's light. You can record video, connect to the internet, and it's not that distracting. So you know, you could actually, I could play an entire game of table tennis while the Google Glass was recording that game.
Okay.
And I was able to play it.
Okay.
Right. So it's something which is, I would have thought that kind of a screen would distract you, but I can play a game of table tennis without getting distracted. So then actually you could be wearing Google Glass very easily while doing everyday things.
So you think it's going to come to India at a much?
See, the thing is that right now it's first of all, it's very expensive, right? It's a lakh of rupees for a stupid goggles which you don't wear most of the times, right? So the fact of the matter is that it has to come down to a price point which is maybe 20,000 rupees or so, 25,000 rupees.
Exactly.
Secondly, I think the form factor has to be something which couples with glasses. So ideally, you know, if you take the BMW car, the glass has the screen, right? So basically you and me wear spectacles, we can still wear Google Glass, right? But if you're not wearing spectacles, then would somebody take a Google Glass? But if for us, if the screen was inside the specs, like you would actually see, you switch it on and it doesn't look very different, then probably you would wear it. Correct. Because there are times when it will be very useful to you.
Correct.
But wearable and the entire, that whole concept of, you know, what is the term called? It's the wearable technology is the quantified self.
Quantified self.
So quantified self is going to be a huge industry, and I think the Internet of Things as they call it, everything is going to get connected, and the kind of things that you can do with it, because at the end of the day, already we're going in that direction where you talk about quantified self in terms of, somebody says that, okay, you know what, I'm going to give you 2 pairs of legs right now, which are bionic in nature, right? So obviously we are not going to go in for it. But what if we were 80 years old? What if we couldn't walk? We were bedridden. If somebody gives you an offer of getting bionic legs at that point in time, where you would be able to walk the way you would walk at the age of 25, would you be tempted to take it up?
Definitely yes.
Right. So the thing is, that's what's going to happen. We're going to actually have quantified self across every single function that you can imagine. As soon as you can make it better, you would go in for it.
What is the future you see in your company right now?
So I think digital marketing is now finally reached a stage where it's become. So I think if I would describe it right, it's no longer about digital marketing now. Digital is the age we're living in. So earlier, we were talking about customer acquisition, etc. Now digital playing a role of a catalyst or multiplier across every single function of an organization. So it could be information dissemination, it could be customer acquisition, it could be brand communication, it could be cross-selling and upselling to existing consumers, it's understanding consumer trends. So basically what happens is that because we're living in a digital age, it's playing the role where almost every single function of an organization is driven where digital plays a role in it.
Okay.
And I think every single person, whatever industry he's in, whatever company he's in, he'll have to understand how digital can be applied to his business. And without that, earlier there was a saying where it said that there'll be 2 kinds of CEOs, one who'll think global and the others will be out of a job. I think digital marketing has now reached that stage where there'll be CEOs who understand digital and CEOs who are out of a job. So digital is something which becoming very exciting, and now there are a lot of areas of moving. So I think the normal thing is, yes, mobile is becoming big, videos becoming big. In fact, content is I think everything in digital. If you ask me, when we actually work with partners, we actually don't work on a digital strategy, we work on a content strategy. Because think of it like this, right? Content, first part of content is all your digital, paid search, etc. Content gives you better quality score. So you get the same click at a cheaper price. So even if you take 20% of your budget and put it in the content, as long as your cost of click reduces by 20%, it sort of amortizes the content cost, creation cost itself, right? Content gives you organic traffic.
Correct.
So it's free traffic. All engagement on social media are going to depend on content. So what happens is your edge rank on Facebook is dependent on what kind of engagement you create.
Absolutely.
Again, is dependent on content.
Absolutely.
So if you take the 3 pillars of digital, organic, paid and social, content is the spinal cord of all the 3 pillars. So basically, if you ask me that if you get your content strategy right, you don't need to get a digital strategy. Content strategy is digital strategy. So I'm a firm believer of that content is going to be definitely a very integral part of everything that you do on digital.
So among the 3 things, what do you think is going to survive in the next 5 years? Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter?
So honestly, Sambad, my belief is that it could be that all 3 of them will survive.
Okay.
Right? Now, at the end of the day, for me, the way we think as an agency, right, we don't think platform, we think concept.
Okay.
Right? So something similar to Facebook, which allows you to do what Facebook allows you to do, would that kind of entity exist? So will Google survive? I don't know. Will search engine survive? Yes. Right? So the fact of the matter is that at any point in time when you have a strategy, think of a strategy from a business objective point of view. And then what happens is you're platform agnostic, it doesn't matter. Whatever platform is the dominant platform at that point in time. But the thing is that what happens is that these platforms create a lot of virtuous or vicious cycle. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's say today I create a search engine which is superior to Google today. So the thing is that when Google improves it, it's compounding it because it does 6 billion searches. So Google tests about 15,000 changes to the engine, right? And 500 of the changes it implements. So because they have 6 billion people, 6 billion searches happening on it every month, the ability for use to that knowledge to improve the search engine is far superior than my current search engine.
Correct.
So in the same way with Facebook, right? There are 1.2 billion people. Now they are able to improve it because they have the data of 1.2 billion people connected to Facebook, whatever billion people connected to Facebook. So it's a virtuous cycle. So for somebody to come and break that and create a new thing is extremely difficult, because what happens is that, and see, if you take Google Plus, right, it's been successful to a certain extent. And Google Plus, I think, is not even like it was a replacement of Facebook. It was planned like a social layer across all the Google properties that it has, right? And Google Plus can actually make money from other advertising options of Google without actually making money from Google Plus itself.
Okay.
But Facebook has to make money there.
Correct.
So it basically gives you that layer across everything. So now today you can't even comment on a video without having a Google Plus account.
Yes.
My Google Glass only connects to Google Plus. So I can't even copy my images. It just connects directly to Google Plus. And that's how I have to update my images, right? So you are almost forced to have a Google Plus layer on every thing that you do.
A lot of people, I've seen them like they have one content, which the same content they put out on Twitter, the same they put on Facebook, the same content they put out on LinkedIn. The same, it's like a copy paste over there. So you think, does it make relevance? I mean, because the audience is a bit different.
True. But you know what the thing is that, if you take, right, at all points of time, you have to think of economics, right? The law of diminishing marginal utility curve. Purely speaking, I would love to create content for specifically hundreds of social media platforms, customized for Instagram and Pinterest and LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and 100 others are there. The fact of the matter is it's not economically viable, correct, right? So what happens is that, okay, you know what, this post will do okay on both of them, right? So it's like, we should do search engines. So what we do is we would create a campaign for Google and then hoping that it works similarly in Yahoo. Because we wouldn't have the time, because 5% of your traffic comes from Yahoo. You don't want to create a campaign. So even the structure of intent of both is different. So the thing is that if a certain platform is big for you, right? So you can decide that, okay, I want to create an Instagram property, which is going to be one of the best Instagram properties there are. And then I'm going to create content for it, right? And you go about, do it, right? So posting the same thing. But if you have a really great image, would it give you interesting likes on Facebook and give you more traction on Google Plus also? Probably it will, right?
Correct.
So if you don't have the time and resources to do it 3 times over or 5 times over, then it's okay to do it. Thing about digital is that you just keep moving. So the thing is, what I recommend to people in digital is that digital is about like taking a compass in your hand, getting the right direction and start walking. Don't try to create a blueprint, because by the time you complete a blueprint, something will change, right? So the thing is, it's like walking in a fog. The only way you're going to get better visibility is to move forward, right? If you don't move forward, the visibility is not going to improve. So the thing is, so many times getting a perfect Twitter strategy or perfect Facebook or Instagram strategy can be your goal, but start posting today. Start taking some actions today. If you can't post 5 times with 5 different types of content, post one content 5 times in 5 different platforms is okay. Do it. Move forward, and as you move forward, you will understand that, okay, what works best, what kind of content works where. So it's all evolution, right? So what happens is, it's like firing bullets. You fire bullets, calibrate them, when they hit the target, then throw a cannonball. Again fire bullets. Because sometimes you fire a bullet, it will be 180 degrees off target. So then you have to actually turn around and find the opposite direction. You have to keep on calibrating it, and digital is about those tests and exercises where you just keep on testing it. Because even after spending 17 years in the industry, I don't know what works, right? So you test it, right? And if it works, calibrate it, then it works, then you throw a cannonball, but then you test again.
Okay. I think, we can get into a long discussion into all this stuff, and we don't have Benedict over here. Otherwise, you would get into SEO and all that stuff. So it's great, Vivek. I had a great time interviewing you, and all the best for the future, and hope to let you get some more money and some more influence over there. So great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you can have a coffee mug and